We're gonna throw rocks.
Yeah, we've been going to throw some rocks. And we've been working through the quote by Blair Warren, people will do anything for those who encourage their dreams, justify their failures, allay their fears, confirm their suspicions, and help them throw rocks at their enemies. And so we've been kind of like armchair quarterbacking it from the end forward. And there again, you know, I think it's worth going back and watching those. So subscribe to my YouTube channel. Think shameless promotion there because that's where the recordings are. But we've really delved into understanding, helping them throw rocks at their enemies. We've talked about confirming their suspicions and all that Columbo stuff, right? And allaying their fears. But the big 800-pound gorilla in the room is justifying their failures. How do we do that? Right? And where does that fit in? And how do we play that? I think we would be tempted to brush over it. It's like we want to bury the most obvious thing in front of us. But if we miss this part of it, we're never going to get there. I'd like to kind of just start the discussion by giving you my magic bean formula, which I hate giving out because sometimes we get into the magic bean formula and we lose sight of things. But the biggest thing when you're trying to justify their failures is they've got to have a safe place. And Richard and I had a conversation about safe places yesterday, and it really brought this key to my mind that you can be talking to somebody and totally miss it because they're afraid to tell you the most obvious thing because they don't feel safe. Make sense? You guys tracking with that? So, Donald's magic bean formula for making somebody feel safe. Are you ready? Talking to a business person or anybody. Even like when you're reaching out to somebody, or gosh, Tom, I'm thinking about you and the work that you're doing. It's like, man, how do you get somebody to that safe space? Because they, in a sense, they feel violated, and it's like, but if you can't get them there, you're never going to get them to the next step. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but don't go there. Go to the other end. So my first question is somebody like I've been talking to a business, right? And they say, I need more clients, right? First thing I'm going to ask them says, well, how did you get the clients you have? In other words, what have you done that has worked? If somebody's trying to lose weight or improve their gut health, what have you done that's worked?
Talk to people.
Yeah, right. And Terry, and then let them talk. What have you done? What have you done with your nutrition and your diet and your exercise that's worked? Tell me about that. And zip it. Okay. Right. And then dig deeper on that. Spend some time there. Ask them, why do you think it worked? Right? Are you feeling it? Eric, when you do your pound drum thing, I mean, what about that has worked? Right? And why? And let them feel that. Let them hold on to their success for a bit, whatever that is. Tony gets this, right? It's like hostage negotiation 101, right? Okay. You get them, and you're not driving, Tony. You said you're gonna be driving. So no, you're not in your car. Come on, you don't have a China
I will
clutch.
be in about 10 minutes. I'm just
Oh, okay.
okay.
So what have they done that has worked? And then when you've let them fully express that and you've honored that and you have acknowledged that, what's the next question going to be?
What hasn't worked?
Yeah. So what hasn't worked? Right? Well, I paid a bunch of money to an agency to generate leads for me, and I don't know, 3 months in, I got no leads. Really? Why do you think that is? Well, they're no good. Obviously, they're no good. Really. Now tell me exactly what you did there. Right? And I'm gonna dig into it. Because maybe they were no good at what they did. You know, it could be that maybe the agency actually was good at what they were doing, but they were what they were doing, but does that make sense? But it could be on their end something they didn't feed the agency correctly to get the results they wanted. Make sense? But ultimately in business, you're going to fail. If you're trying to generate leads and conversations, I'm going to tell you, you're going to try a bunch of stuff that doesn't work. Has anybody tried a bunch of stuff to generate leads for their business that didn't work? Right. You know, so join the club, right? Does that make sense? So when we're unpacking this, how does that hit you? In your business, how do you justify their failures?
We sort of talked about this just recently
Mm-hmm.
about, struggling to be really transparent. I feel like a nerd. I hate showing my stuff on social media,
Mm-hmm.
my car, my 78 cars and all that. That's what that transparent, showing your own vulnerabilities and your own silliness
Mm-hmm.
really sort of takes a little of the edge off of
Yeah.
other people approaching you and feeling safe with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not. Well, I was in a multi-level thing once, and my sponsor had perfect hair. I mean, perfect. And he made it. His wife made it known. Don't touch his hair. It had to be perfect. That was weird. That was off-putting. It was not. It was not comfortable. Somebody trying to be that perfect is not warm and fuzzy to you.
Hmm.
Somebody who lets his hair hang down a little bit and is a little scruffled up and isn't perfect. Columbo, there you go. Columbo, the guy who's not perfectly tailored, is interesting. And I guess we have to be that guy to some extent to open up people to us.
Mhm. Where's the poetry in this, Elaine?
Well, what more poetry do you need besides Columbo?
Yeah. Right.
It's interesting they brought up Columbo because that's the model I use for investigation. Of course, Columbo was an investigator, but with the accent I have, it sounds like I just came off a turnip truck last night. So, I asked them, I go, what color's the sky? And if they say green, I go with green. Well, what makes you think it's green? And just let them continue to lie to me if that's what they want to do. But it's interesting that y'all mentioned Columbo because that's the character that I mock when I do a lot of investigative work.
Some people are colorblind, so not everyone sees the colors the same too. So I just think that's important to note. You're talking to people, not everybody sees something the same, doesn't mean they're lying.
Right, and that's the reason I ask them what makes you think that, because I want to know what they're thinking. I don't want to know what the truth is per se. I want to know what their perceptions are.
I had a friend once who was blindingly rich, but I didn't know it till near the end of his life. He died early, but he wasn't. But I didn't. He kept. He didn't personify that at all. His son was in our basketball team with my son. You never knew it. He was totally accessible. He was equal to us because you never knew he had that blinding amount of money. It just never showed it. Never talked about it. Never let anybody know he had it.
Well, Eben said that most people like money are like that. They're just going to look like other people, and they want it that way.
The last thing
love
that I
that.
want to do when I go to the store is to be recognized. I'm going to, partly because I'm an introvert, but I love going to the store anonymously.
I was just going to say that idea of the truth versus the perception of the truth.
Mm.
When you are in a conversation with someone, whether it be in investigation or in sales, when you reflect back what the truth is, that doesn't always get a response. You have to reflect back their perception of the truth because that's how they see it. It's pretty deep.
You're telling me my ex-wife is not the wait. Not my fault.
Don't forget this is being recorded.
That's why I was really careful with what I said there, David. Thank you. I didn't mention any names. That's just a synthesis of reality, a story, not any particular individual, right?
I just didn't want you to make an admission against your own interest, Don.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course,
I
it
could be
depends on
using
how
this in a
many
court of
ex-wives
law.
you've had.
Yeah. You know, another big part of this too, we know, well, we should know that the path to success is on the back of multiple failures. And so when you see a successful person, they didn't always have perfect hair. They woke up without perfect hair. They really did, right? So when you're engaging with somebody, no matter what you're selling, it's a product or a service, it's setting real, I think it's part of it, this justifying failures just dovetails right into the back of setting realistic expectations. If you get this pellet smoker and you really want to successfully smoke the best chicken you've ever done in your life, it's going to take some hours. It's going to take some work. You're going to have to investigate which kind of pellets and blend of wood in those pellets to use for your particular taste. Close your ears, Terry. I'm talking about meat, okay? But you know, and it's going to take some work, and you're going to have to, I mean, cleaning that thing is going to be a horrendous process. And it's very likely at some point you're going to mess up and you're going to have a massive fire in your smoker. Set realistic expectations. Because it's going to be tough no matter what you do. If you're trying to change your diet, if you're trying to change your patterns in your business, if you're trying to overcome a long ingrained bad habit, if you're trying to overcome an early imprinted fear in your life, right? You were 3 years old and you peered into your closet and these three eyes peered back at you. Right, Tom? I mean, that gets imprinted on you. It's like that didn't go away, right? So setting realistic goals, I think, is part of this process when you're talking with somebody. Obviously, when you're working with somebody, but I mean, even in that initial conversation, right? If you're going to have the childbirth of your dreams, I'm going to tell you, there's going to be some ugly moments. There are going to be some things that you just wish you didn't have to go through. It's like, right? So it's kind of that, isn't it?
Well, justify their failures, justify it. And I've heard it said in counseling or whatever. Yeah. We've got a friend who believes some just stuff that makes my stomach turn to hear her talk about it. But the approach is, if I can see how you got there, I can see how you got there from where you're at. I can see how what you believe got you to that point. I'm not agreeing with her. I'm saying, all right, I see how you got there. I get it. I I it's come alongside someone and saying that to them. I wouldn't go so far as to say I've been there too, because I wasn't ever where she's at. But I can say, oh, okay, I can see where you got from point A to point B. I see that. That's justifying it without agreeing, I get that much of it.
Terry, I'm kind of curious in your giving up sugar thing here that you're doing, and I'm just applauding you every day. Okay, and And I like the video that you kind of posted, what is your fear about giving? It's not just giving up sugar. What's your fear about giving up sugar? Does this kind of resonate? Are you making sense of this? It's like, as you're sitting there with it, I'm kind of curious, like, just like Richard just said, it's just like, okay, I can see how you got there, but I'm not with you. It's like what I shared with you about me, going and getting the maple bar. And I thank you so much for right away sending me a note. Hey, Donald, how often you have that maple bar?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yes, setting realistic goals is part of the process. And in fact, what I did this time differently than the first challenge is I made sure that people had a conversation with me about the challenge first, so I could kind of process where they're coming from and just getting a little bit more background on that. And that was very helpful.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and asking them like, what made them really want to do something like this? And yeah, like what are their goals for this? So yeah, we're very clear, and it's nice because I mean, I got two people are like, I'm doing this, I'm giving it a 10. They're
Yeah,
like committed. They're like so committed. And I'm like, yes.
that's a big change, isn't it? Yeah, and you
Yeah.
say part, and along the way too. I mean, with all of us, celebrate the small wins, right? We've all seen those ladders, right? There's this ladder, to success, right? And there's the one ladder that's got the major bumps between the rungs. It ain't that, right? And then you got the ladder that's right. Celebrate the small wins. So, like when you do talk to somebody, right, and they're just inching their way forward. I mean, don't get carried away. I mean, don't like. It's not like so many times in sports, they just get a participation awards. I'm not really in favor of that, but it's like, come on, you know. But doggone it, if you hit the ball out into the outfield, let's cheer for them, right? Even though they got out at first, at least they got the ball into the outfield, right? So the other team was a little bit faster, on the uptake. Find those little small wins along the way, right? There's a yin and a yang there. You're not going to have the sweet without the savory, right?
One of the things that I heard in a class earlier this week was that when making change or recovering, relapse is a part of recovery. And so some of the failures would just be just part of the rhythm, the process, like you said. Got what word you used, Donald, but just to throw in a couple of other words for different perspective.
Yeah, very good, Elaine. Very good.
One of the meanings or threads from Justify that's not so well known. Those of us who've worked with fonts and typesetting, there's a setting for Justify the type, and I believe I could be a little bit wrong, but I think it means to make it exact. It means to make the spacing exact in a particular way. So if we're making their failures exact, we're helping them, or we're challenging them to clarify the failures. So it's a specific thing. It's not like I'm a worthless piece of what because this didn't work. No, it's, maybe you only did it for 2 days and you needed to do it for 3 days, or you did the sugar for a week and the benefits really begin to happen after 2 weeks. Good on you for doing it. You see, I mean, in other words, we can clarify it to the point where the person can go, oh, I'm still okay then. Yeah. And look at what you did. And the failure came with this one specific little thing. Anyway.
That's huge. Everybody kind of cluing at it. David and I were having a conversation. Was that just yesterday we were talking, David? My gosh, it's a long time ago. But we were talking about generating conversations and leads. And David's been using LinkedIn some and has been using Facebook. And if feel, is it okay I shared this, what we talked about, David?
Sure, it hadn't even been a day ago. It was just 4 o'clock yesterday. So it hadn't even
Okay,
been a full
sorry,
day
it's not
yet,
even
just
24
hours
hours.
ago.
Hours ago. But there again, it's like, he basically says, how do I get more conversations? Well, duh, LinkedIn, right? So we went through all that because Donald's LinkedIn ninja, but then I guess he's just, I was buying some Facebook ads. And so I didn't just say, oh, gee, you bought, I like, okay, tell me exactly what you did, right? How much did you spend? How did you spend that? Right? All of that kind of stuff. And so it didn't work. Right? And so don't just say like, oh yeah, gee, there's a failure, right? If we take the time now, it's going to be there to take that apart in a good way, in a safe way, right? We're going to get faster to the answer, or when we're ready to provide our solution, maybe which is a different pathway, okay, they will feel like we've honored them or we've taken the time to, does that make sense? It's like, okay, how did you get there? And what were you thinking? And it's not like that, like, what were you thinking? It's like, we see, if I say it like that, it's like, oh, you see, defenses go up, right? Like, you idiot, what were you doing spending money on Facebook? Come on, I told you not to do that. No, right? Hey, that's a noble effort. Yeah, I did that at one time. It's like, this is what I found out, right? That kind of a thing. Like, what did you think was going to happen when you held those drumsticks like caveman claws, right? And what you thought you weren't going to seize up your arm muscles or something? You know what I mean? Like, what made you think that that was going to work, right? Or you know what I did the other night, Eric? I missed a repeat. I'm accompanying, right? And so I we hire accompanist now in my music company, but once in a while I pinch in, and so I'm playing on one song, right? My one chance, right? Easy piece, right? I missed the repeat. So it's like, right? Donald failed. Why did I do that? Well, because on the Del Segno, we don't take the repeat, right? And I forgot where I was. I thought we were back at the beginning the second time through, and I missed the repeat. I'm like, well, so I missed the repeat. Does it make sense? But why? Right? And sit with that for a moment. Why did that failure happen? We have to do this externally with others. We have to do it with ourselves, right? And that's how we get there. Justify their failures. Justify your own failures.
Help drive that point in. Have you ever, my significant other works for a lady who you do what she asked, then she'll come back later and say, why did you do that? How come have you worked for somebody who's like beat you up over a little, you know how bad that feels? To enforce what you're saying, Donald. Now think of how good it feels to have one who says, oh, I see how you got there. That's, I'm with you. I've done that too, or I can see. I just wanted to illustrate the opposite to see how powerful what you're saying is.
Yeah.
If you've ever been around someone who does the opposite and sort of beat you up for a little, why that? The way the tone of voice you use, why the hell did you do that? Oh, that hurts. Oh, I see how you did that. That feels so much better.
And the biggest factor that for all of you that you can do is record a call when you're talking to somebody. And I mean, as we've been talking about this last few weeks and unpacking it, challenge yourself to go and listen to a recording of you talking to somebody and see how far off you are. It'd probably shock you. Make sense? It's like you think, oh, I think I got it. I'm not doing it all. And oh gosh, I got them smiling, right? If you talk to Carly, man, how can you not help but smile, right? But I bet she messes this up, right? And so Carly's talking to somebody and they're happy because I mean, you just cannot, she's just infectious with her, right? But even Carly should be challenged to go back and listen to a call because you may be missing it. In other words, we get masked in the moment. Has anybody ever talked with somebody and thought, man, I've got them 10 ways to Sunday, and then they ghost you? It happened to me when I was in college dating girls. I was like, oh, I've got them, I got them. And then I went to pick them up for the thing, and like they weren't there. Like, wait a minute, I said I'd be right there. Like, they're not there. What did I miss in your conversations it's probably somewhere in here. Does that make sense? This could be with your employees. Pay attention to those that have employees. I mean, it's ultimately we always think about all this sales process. This is like getting clients. No, this is everything. Okay. This is building your team. People that you contract with you. I mean, it's just everything. It's right in there. It's not exclusive to generating new business. Any good quotes yet today, Tom?
Yeah, got a few of them. Got a few of them.
Okay, we're hitting some points here.
What's that?
That makes me feel like we might be hitting some points here.
Cool.
Sometimes I fail.
And sometimes they go by so fast I can't catch them all, so that happens
Oh.
too. So
So today's a slow day, so we're getting
Hey, Donald, as the expert guy on this, I can see doing this for someone I know pretty well, but you're constantly in a situation where you're talking to people for the first time.
Yeah.
You just met them on LinkedIn. You don't know that much about them really.
Mhm.
How do you sort of create that feeling of safety and feeling of, I get what you're doing before you even know them very well? You kind of have to start right out of the box with some version of this, don't you?
Yes. The biggest factor will be what I'm going to call mirror and matching. Okay, you've all heard that, right? And when you're talking with somebody, the fastest way to get there is to be very in tune to their pacing and changes in pacing as you're talking with them. You'll know if you're hitting it. And what you're listening for specifically, no matter how fast they're talking, is you want to hear those points where they slow down a little bit. If you're talking to somebody and then they slow down a little bit, they're coming towards you. If you're talking to somebody and they start speeding up more, they're going away from you.
Oh, wow, what an insight.
It makes sense? So pay attention to pacing, right? The other thing, so let's and pacing, and then I'm going to talk about rhythm. So then pay attention to rhythm. And the most comforting rhythm is short, 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 long. Right, Eric? I mean, it's just like, there is so much incredible art, so much incredible music that the backbone of it, it's right there. You've heard of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony? Bum, 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 bum. Short, 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 long. So, Richard, when you're talking with somebody, pay attention to the rhythm.
I find it very interesting you're saying that opening theme of Beethoven's Fifth, or whichever movement that was, I forgot.
Right,
But
it's the opening movement number one, right out
all
of the
right,
bat.
okay.
And so here,
But to me, that sets up a tension rather than become comforting. That first phrase.
well, so it does both. Okay, so here's the subtlety of it. Yes, it does both. And so that's a microcosm of if you start analyzing the entire movement and then the entire symphony, then you see that plays in, it all plays together. But Lane, like what you're saying, like if you're in the right in the start of the conversation, right? How do you find those things? What are you listening for? What are you trying to project out? It's going to be there. And so, like when I said, like when we're talking fast and then we get to a slow spot, see that's short, 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 long. If I'm saying short, 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 long, and then I'm hearing that back, then coming back at me, I'm in the zone. If I'm not hearing the rhythm, I'm off.
And if we reverse that long, short, 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 and there's nothing, that leaves a gaping hole. In other words, we want there to be something there. I want something, I want to have something there at the short, short, short. And then there's an anticipation. For me, that's attention there.
Yeah. I use this subtly all the time, Elaine. And I remember David, who's on this call, Mr. David Bennett, my dear friend, my Southern gentleman friend from Tennessee. The first time I talked to David, he wouldn't get on video. But, because like it was always phone calls before, right? And so we went to this Zoom thing. It was a couple, 3 years back, David. And he didn't get it.
You have to remember, I work with criminal elements, so I'm not a trusting person with people on the phone, and I damn sure not used to anybody asking me questions. I'm the one that asks questions.
Right.
So Don had a wall to climb when he was dealing with me.
And it took me about I would say 10 minutes into that call, I got him to turn his camera on. Do you remember that, David?
I remember, because that's the reason I thought that is what you're talking about, because that's what I thought. You had to be a master at it, because I wasn't anywhere toward discussing any particulars about mine. I was just there for you to give me some information, and not that, try to analyze what I was doing at all. I wanted you to give me a couple of good scripts to use, just like Chet would handed you, and I was good to go, man. I need a lot of discussion about it.
And so, Elaine, part of what I was doing with David is I was mirroring and matching, and I was paying attention to rhythm. Now here's the other flip side of this. David and I have become really good friends. Okay, why is that? So when I did that, I don't do that to trick people. Okay, so here's a real course in effectiveness. If you are doing things to trick people or to manipulate people, it ain't gonna work. Or it might work, but it's gonna backfire on you. So as you're doing these things, like when Terry reaches out and she wants to help people kick the sugar habit, right? She has so much passion and love around that, and she knows the end result. It's an authentic movement and reach out. Do you see the difference? So you
For
have
sure,
to,
but what I was thinking wasn't that you're trying to trick somebody. It's just that, I mean, I don't know, maybe with your higher level of musical ability, this is just not so. I mean, it just seems to me hugely technical, and like me trying to do that would just, I don't know how that would feel. I would just feel like I was paying attention to the wrong things rather than listening to what they're saying and just trying to say what I'm saying. That I have to, I mean, I do rhythm with poetry, but I just don't.
Oh, come on.
To some extent.
I've
But
heard
I'm
you.
not,
I've heard you sing. You're also a musician. Come on.
well, yeah, but I mean, I took to it, like I became a serious musician, we can argue 8 years ago. That's it.
Okay.
If you can even call me a serious musician.
Well,
But, I'm dedicated to it, but I'm not a professional. Really.
I would say you're better than you think you are.
Well, thank you. It's just, it's an uphill battle.
It always is. Yeah. It's and don't be intimidated by us that maybe has been in the pits with the professionals, because we're just as scared as everybody else, Elaine. It is scary. Eric, when you're into like 82 measures of rest and you've got a bass drum hit that has to come in on the second half of the third beat, I mean, it's holy terror, isn't it? I mean, you're not comfortable with that.
No. And yeah, no. And not only are you counting to keep your place, which is a relatively mundane thing to do, before that entrance, as a percussionist in particular, you're subdividing the pulse of the music to the smallest increment that makes sense. So you know exactly where to put the note. I won't try to vocalize that, but and with the bass drum, since just to go into the weeds a little bit, since the bass drum speaks, it's a very low pitched instrument. You actually have to play it slightly ahead of where you want the sound to be heard. So you're counting, you're subdividing, and you actually play it at a moment where it's not musically what feels right, but that's where you have to play it so it sounds right out in the audience or to the conductor.
And you feel wholly inadequate the entire time. Like, oh my God, I'm going to die any moment.
Yep.
And you know what I did last night? Not only did I miss the repeat, but at the end, my wife says, now in the performance, you're not going to count out loud, are you? And you know, my response was, I didn't realize I was counting out loud. And so it was like, and so I was counting and subdividing the beat out loud and didn't realize it, Elaine. So see,
My
justify.
piano teacher would probably be glad if I was doing,
Yeah, so
I would
you know,
make an improvement.
so justify. So wherever you are, right? It's like, don't. How do I say this? We are all failures. And when you talk with people, I don't care who they are, whether they're the CEO of a $300 million company or they've got all the letters past their name, I'm going to guarantee you there is a problem there. It is just, it's just, you got to find it and align with it. Do not be intimidated. J. David Bennett, CPA, CFE. What the heck? I mean, you think this guy's got it. No, this guy struggles, right? It's just like, right? And this like, okay, what is it? Right? So sit with it there. You've got it, they've got it. Okay. So when you justify their failures, you're providing that safe place. But you're not going to let them sit on the failures. Justifying it doesn't mean, you know, this is okay. Okay, so the justifying doesn't mean, oh, it's okay you failed. No, that's not okay you failed. But you know, let's dig out of this pit. It helped you guys out.
Can I ask you another question?
No, you've used all your questions.
I use them all up. You're talking, because I've listened to you so much. You're talking about really I would say sophisticated stuff. It takes me a long time to learn sophisticated stuff. What you're talking about doing is a very aware and okay, here's the question. How long did it take you? How do we get to that place where we can actually do it? Practice it at social setting? How did you're a musician. I think Elaine brought that up. Rhythm is natural to you anyway. Maybe not to everybody.
It is probably the hardest thing for me.
So
When I met Eric and found out he was a percussionist, I was intimidated by Eric because I knew he had rhythm down and I did not.
So what's your advice for us getting there ourselves? How do we make that progression?
Understand that Donald fails at this over and over and over and over again. I do not have this perfected. I blow it over and over again.
Yeah,
How do I get there? Is I continually work on it.
Yeah.
And I get a little bit better every time and then I backslide. I get a little bit better and then I backslide.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
And you know, the biggest thing, Richard, and for all of us, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
I've always said that. I love that. We do. I love that.
Yeah, it's just talking with my dear friend Angela Durant the other day, and she lost her husband about a week ago. And you know, her comment to me, she said, so many people were talking over her. I thought, really? I just thought to myself, her, in the first week, I mean, she's all these people with all the advice for her. She says, everybody was talking over me. It's not what I needed. And so when you're talking with a potential client, you're talking with a current client, when you're talking with people on your team, right? Your employees, your subcontractors. Are you paying attention? I get the most out of the people that work for me, not because I dictate for them what to do or make sure that they're excellent at what they do, is because I pay attention to them. And I pick up on the things that they're not saying and the feelings that they're having that maybe it's hard for them to express. So Richard, in a sales conversation, it's not complicated, just giving space for that to happen. So part of it is the patience. And this is where I kind of bump heads with some other sales trainers out there, because I get and not that they're wrong. Okay, so here's the thing. They do it differently. They're absolutely right. And the way they do it actually works. But so does my way. I'm more patient. Right, Carly? Patience and patience, patience. And Carly reminds me. See, even Donald has to be reminded, because I got impatient. So here again, you see, now then, you see, I'm telling you guys to have patience, and I messed it up. I was not having patience, right? And I had to reach out to my friend Carly, and she has to remind me, Donald, have patience, right? Pay attention. Let's help you guys out today.
And I'll add to that, I'm not the most patient person, and I am also recognizing the patience. So that's where that comes from.
It just means sit around and do nothing. I mean, it's just really, but it's like, have some patience. And then Richard, the fastest way to get to it is to record yourself. This is the biggest telling factor is, like a call or even just talking to yourself in the mirror. Record yourself and go back and listen to yourself and make yourself comfortable with what you're doing. That's probably if you can work with somebody that can listen to what you're doing and give you critique, absolutely. I've done a lot of that. I do it all the time. But you can also do it, each of you, for yourself. Find some way to record a conversation with somebody, and not just a sales call. I'm going to tell you, just record conversations you're having. This is very telling.
Ooh.
And then go back and listen to the conversation. Your perception as you're having that conversation is much different than going back and critiquing it. And then challenge yourself to listen to that conversation at least 3 times. It's the biggest growth factor in your life. It's humbling.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
I would like to point out, Richard, that you really bring sort of realness often to these conversations, and that you'll be saying, well, what about this or the other side or something that you're not comfortable about. And it's some of the best stuff I'm hearing in these conversations. What's easy is that Donald's got these up on his channel, and some of the recent calls that we've had, you could start with those if you want to listen to yourself having a conversation.
Oh yeah, there you go. Go listen to. Oh geez, oh you got me, Elaine. Yeah, that'll be telling. If you don't, that I'm trying to learn to improv on trumpet, Donald, right? Jazz improv. I set up a studio in my office so I could record myself. OMG. The first time, oh my God, you listen to yourself, it's like, that is such crap. It's horrible, awful, horrible, terrible. And then a month later, it's like, yeah, it's merely bad. And then another month or 2 later, it's like, yeah, it doesn't annoy me. It just keeps getting, but it's incremental. better, a little better. And then at the end, you're listening to the tiniest little mistake instead of this gigantic mess. You're listening, that little entry was bad. And I'm sure it's exactly the same what you're talking about, Donald, is
Mhm.
incremental. Oh, that was terrible. Oh, wait, okay, that's not terrible. Just a little bit at a time. But what great advice, Donald, to listen to yourself. Just great advice.
In when you're talking to somebody like Terry, like with your thing you're doing here this month with the sugar, and I'm sure you're doing this, but just getting somebody to write down what they're actually eating. You know what I mean? Like, consistently. I mean, how telling. Oh, but also for ourselves, right? Like, what am I actually eating? What, like, it's what I think I'm doing, but what am I actually doing, right? And my son is using this app now for his exercise. And I think for myself, I think, oh my gosh, because like I go to the gym and I just kind of do what I always do, right? But I thought to myself, do I really? Right? But I watch these people as they're doing things at the gym, inputting it, and I'm thinking, oh, that's what they're doing. It's like what they think they're doing is like, what are they actually doing? Because I think I remember the weight I did last time and the number of repetitions, but what did I really do? And then again, how long did it take me to do it? Right? And so we do all of these things incrementally in our personal lives, in our businesses, with our clients. It's the same on their side, right? I mean, it's everybody that you're talking to, it's the same doggone thing.
There's a
Makes sense.
saying from one of those Zen masters whose name I never knew. We teach best what we most need to learn.
That's always like when you're crazy and you go to the doctor to help you be uncrazy. And you're thinking, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to a crazy person to help me be uncrazy. No, I didn't mention any profession by name. I just very good. Good
It's the
conversation today.
paradigm of the wounded healer.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Thank you all for your input. This was really, really good.